Standalone letters look different depending on whether they're at the beginning of a word, the middle of the word, or the end of the word. Yeah. Let's go through some letters that look similar, which is why they sometimes trip people up. So let's go over the letter B. The most important thing about the letter B is the dot underneath. So when it's at the beginning of a word, you break it up so you can join letters after it, but it still maintains the single dot underneath. Yeah. When the B is in the middle of a word, even though there are letters before it and after it, you know this shape is a B because it has a dot underneath. And the B at the end is quite easy to recognize because it still maintains its shape. It just has a little extra something here. Yeah. Okay, now let's go over the letter Noon. So standalone, it looks like a completely different letter, yeah? It's more circular, whereas the B is more stretched out. But the most important thing about the Noon is the dot on top. Because when you break up the Noon, it looks exactly like a B at the beginning of a word, except it has a single dot on top. And when the Noon is in the middle of a word, it looks exactly like a B, except it has a dot on top. And then when it's at the end of a word, it's back to its recognizable shape. Okay, let's go over the letter T. So the most important thing about the letter T are the two dots on top. So even though it has the same shapes at the beginning of the word, like a B and a Noon, it maintains the two dots on top. In the middle of a word, it will have two dots on top. And at the end of a word, it's recognizable again. Let's go with the letter Y. So again, standalone, it looks recognizable. Yeah, it's completely different from a T. However, when a Y is at the beginning of a word, the only way to tell the difference between a T and a Y is that there's two dots underneath. And in the middle of a word, it has the same shape, except the two dots are underneath. And then at the end of the word, it goes back to its recognizable shape. Let's do another similar one. So again, the letter Th is long and stretched. The most recognizable thing about the Th is the three dots on top. So at the beginning, it has three dots on top. In the middle, the most recognizable thing is its three dots on top. And at the end, it goes back to its recognizable shape. So what sometimes people do is they see the three dots, and whenever they see three dots, they immediately assume it's a Th. However, there's another letter that also has three dots. In standalone, the sheen doesn't look anything like a Th. However, sometimes when it's at the beginning of a word, people sometimes see just the three dots and they assume it's a Th. But these bumps will tell you whether it's a sheen or a Th, right? So when it's at the middle of a word, you see these bumps, and then the three dots tell you it's a sheen, yeah? Because the three dots are on top of bumps as opposed to straight lines. And at the end of a word, it goes back to its recognizable shape, which is fine. And for sake of completion, let's just add the letter Seen. It's the same shape as the sheen, just no dots, yeah? You have the bumps, but no dots. In the middle of a word, you still have the bumps, but no dots. And at the end of the word, bumps, but no dots. Okay, let's try some more letters that are easily confused with one another. So we have the letter Sad. So it has this raindrop shape and then the tail. And the most important thing about the letter Sad is this raindrop shape. So when it's at the beginning of a word, you just keep the raindrop shape and then you add on the rest of the letters. When it's at the middle of a word, you just see this raindrop shape and then the rest of the letters. And then at the end of a word, it's back to its recognizable shape. And what people sometimes do is they confuse it with the letter Tra. So standalone, it looks like this. It doesn't look like there's anything to be confused about. So at the beginning of a word, the Tra will look like this, but then it has a line on top, yeah? So even though both of them have this raindrop shape, one has the line and one doesn't have a line. So in the middle of a word, we'll have this raindrop shape and a line as well. And then at the end, it's back to its recognizable shape. So just like Sad and Ta are sometimes confused in their broken shapes, they're partners with the dots, so the Dad and the Va are sometimes confused for each other as well. Okay, let's do another round of letters. Let's go over the Jim, the Ha and the Kha. And standalone, they look very similar. So the Jim has a dot in the middle, the Ha doesn't have a dot, and the Kha has a dot on top. So when the Jim is at the beginning of a word, it only maintains its triangle shape. And since we've cut off this tail, it looks as though the dot is at the bottom, but really it would still be in the middle if it still maintained its tail, right? Whereas the ha, when it's at the beginning of the word, it only has a triangle shape. It doesn't have any dots. And the kha, it has a triangle shape, but the dot is on the top. Yeah? So the jim has a dot underneath, and the kha has a dot on top. Likewise, in the middle of words, you see this distinct triangle shape. If it has a dot underneath, it's a jim. If it has no dots, it's a ha. If the triangle shape has a dot on top, it's a kha. And again, at the end of words, they go back to their original shapes. And the ha doesn't have any dots. This is the line that connects it to the rest of the word. And the kha has a dot on top. Sometimes these letters, the ba, the ta, the tha, the noon and the ya, can sit on these letters. What do I mean by that? When they're in their initial positions, they take on this shape, yeah? So whether it has one dot underneath because it's a ba, one dot on top because it's a noon, two dots underneath because it's a ya, two dots on top because it's a ta, or three dots on top because it's a tha, any of these 5 letters can sit on the triangle shape of a jim, ha, and a kha. How do they do that? So whenever you see this triangle shape and an elongated line stretched outwards, they're actually 2 different letters. This line will always have dots. This line will either have 1 dot underneath, letting us know it's a ba, 1 dot on top telling us it's a noon, 2 dots underneath telling us it's a ya, 2 dots on top telling us it's a ta, and then this triangle shape will either be a ha if there's no dots, or it will be a jim if there's 1 dot underneath, or it will be a kha if there's 1 dot on top. Yeah? But this green line will always have dots. So for example, you could either write nakhlatun, which means a palm tree, like this, where you have this initial shape with the dot on top telling you it's a noon, then the triangle shape with the dot on top telling you it's a kha, and then the rest of the letter, yeah? Nakhlatun. Or you can write it the combined way. So you have this stretched out line first with the dot on top telling you it's a noon. You go into the triangle of the kha, you put the dot on top, and then you go into nakhlatun. Another example would be something like nahlatun, which means a bee. So you have this initial shape with the dot on top telling you it's a noon. This triangle shape without any dots because it's a ha, and then you finish off the rest of the word. Nahlatun. So nakhlatun with a kha is a palm tree. Nahlatun with a ha is a bee. So if you want to write it the tricky way, or if you see it, or you might see it written like this, where you have the noon, the ha, and then the rest of the word, yeah? So this line on top has to have a dot. And in this case, the dot is on top because it's a noon. And here in this case, since this triangle shape doesn't have a dot, we know it's a ha. And then you write the rest of the letter as normal, yeah? So nahlatun. Okay, let's do one more round of similar looking letters. Fa by itself is flat on the line with 1 dot on top. And the qaf by itself has the loop, but it goes slightly underneath the line with 2 dots on top. So when the fa is at the beginning of a word, it just has the loop with 1 dot on top. Whereas the qaf has the loop with 2 dots on top. When it's in the middle of a word, it just has the loop. You have letters on either side with 1 dot on top. When the qaf is in the middle of a word, you have the loop with 2 dots on top. And then when they're at the end of the word, they're back to their familiar shapes. Yeah? So really it's these 2 positions that are tricky. And they get even trickier with another letter. So let's try the letter meme. So again, standalone, it looks very, very different. However, when the meme is at the beginning of a word, all it has is the loop at the beginning. It will have this triangle shape, yeah? It's the meme. And when it's in the middle of a word, it will, instead of looping upwards, the meme will loop downwards, yeah? And then at the end of a word, the meme will go back to its recognizable shape. And the reason why I stress that the loop goes downwards is because there's another shape where the loop goes upwards. And this letter is the letter Ain. So again, standalone, it looks completely different. And even in its initial shape, it looks different. All we're doing is cutting off the tail. However, when you come to the Ain in the middle of a word, it will either loop upwards, like a roller coaster, or it will take on this triangular shape, or sometimes it might even be coloured in. Yeah? So it's very important that you do the meme downwards and the Ain upwards. And then at the end of the word, it goes back to its recognisable shape. Yeah? And the same with the letter Ghain, yeah? All it is just the dots on top that are different. One other thing that I do want to stress about the letter Ain in its initial position is that when it's big, it's a Ain, yeah? So even though a Hamza looks like the letter Ain in its initial position, the Hamza is too small to be by itself, yeah? It will always be using the letter Ya without dots as a chair, or it will use the letter Waw as a chair instead, yeah? So when it's big, it's a Ain. When it's little, it's a Hamza. Okay, let's do two tricky letters that look nothing like their standalone parts. So we have the letter Ha, which is a triangle shape with a little Waw inside. So when the Ha is at the beginning of a word, it will look like its initial shape, except the Waw bit doesn't go underneath the line, it just carries on so it can join onto the letters, yeah? When a Ha is in the middle of a shape, so you have this line to attach to letters this way, it turns into an 8 figure. And then you have letters and you attach it that way, yeah? And when the Ha is at the end of a word, it will take on this shape. However, if the letter before it is a naughty letter, we don't use this shape with the line that helps it attach. We use this detached version instead. And one other letter that doesn't really resemble its standalone letter is the letter Kaf. So when it's at the beginning of a word, it will, this little S shape inside becomes big. And the letter Kaf looks like this when it's at the beginning of a word. And then you add letters after it. When it's in the middle of a word, you do a forward diagonal line, a backward diagonal line, and then you add on another line so letters can join on, yeah? And then when it's at the end of a word, it goes back to its recognisable shape. So what about the remaining 7 letters? These are naughty letters. Naughty letters don't like to join with letters after them. So let's do an example. So if you have the word for door, which is babun, the ba after it allows letters to join, yeah, like the alif. So that's why a letter has joined. However, the alif doesn't like to join. So rather than joining on the ba to the alif, you leave a gap after the alif and then you do the ba, yeah? So even though this is all part of one word, you still have a gap inside because the alif is a naughty letter and it doesn't like adding letters after it, yeah? So just like alif is a naughty letter that doesn't let letters after it join, even if it's part of the same word, the dal, zal, ra, za and the waw are also naughty letters. Lam isn't a naughty letter, but because alif is a naughty letter, when a letter joins to the word after it, you know it's a lam. When a letter doesn't join to the letter after it, you know it's an alif. And that's how you can differentiate between whether a letter is a lam or an alif. Yeah? So a lam standalone looks like this. When it's in the beginning of a word, it's just a straight line. However, it has this little line after it that allows it to join. Whereas when you have an alif, when an alif is in the beginning of a word, alif doesn't like to join. Which is how you know if a word is beginning with a line that connects, it's a lam. If the word is beginning with a line that doesn't connect, it's an alif. Yeah. Likewise, when a lam is in the middle of a word, it will have letters before it. We'll have this connecting line going up to this straight line and then a collecting line afterwards joining onto letters after it. Whereas with an alif, the alif allows letters to join on this side. The connecting line will go up to the alif, but then there'll be a gap and the letters will continue after it, yeah? There won't be a connecting line. And when the lam is the final letter of a word, it goes back to its recognisable shape with its tail, and the alif does the same, yeah? So the alif only likes to connect on the right side. It never connects on the left side. And this is the same for all naughty letters, yeah? The naughty letters, they just have their standalone version and their end versions. So if you have the letter dal, it looks like this. Even if the dal is the beginning of a word, like for example darun, the dal is a naughty letter. It doesn't like joining two letters after it. So the next letter is not joined to it. Alif is also a naughty letter. It doesn't like joining after it. So the next letter is not joined to it. Darun. All of it is made up of naughty letters. So none of the letters connect, even though they make up one word. So dal only has this initial position. Or if dal comes after a word, you have a connecting line and then the dal. Same with the dhal, yeah? Dhal only has its standalone position and its terminal position, yeah? And don't confuse the dhal with the noon, because the noon will connect onto letters after it. A dhal will not connect onto letters after it, yeah? The next set of naughty letters are the ra. So the ra has its standalone version, and when it's at the end of a word, you have this line that allows it to connect to letters behind it, and then the ra ends, yeah? Same with the za, it's the same shape as the ra, just with a dot. And the waw as well. So the waw has its standalone position, and you have letters that end in a waw, so you have this line that join up to the letters, and then the waw at the end, yeah? So hopefully that gives you a good idea of letters that look like each other in their broken forms, as well as the naughty letters which don't like letters joining on after them.